Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Mission Matters Money podcast, your source for all things money. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres. Keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, missionmatters.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Brian Bradley on the line, and he's Senior Managing Partner over at Bradley Legal Corp. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Adam, for having me on and putting this podcast together, and I hope that some of the concepts we talked about today help your listeners out.
All right, Brian, excited to have you on today. So we're going to talk about asset protection trusts and the benefits of creating them. But before we do that, let's go a little bit further into your practice. Tell us a little bit more about Bradley Legal Corp, please.
Yeah, no problem. So as you said, I'm an asset protection attorney, and, by being in the legal system, the sad thing is that, the legal system's broken, and it's not about justice any longer. We're a sue-happy nirvana, now with more than 40 million lawsuits filed every year in the U.S., and litigation's become a billion-dollar business with predatory lawsuits. And so what we do is provide peace of mind for clients and, leveling the playing field, while trying to keep in mind the overall goal of asset protection really is lifestyle preservation, and changing the way a predator views you, and more importantly, how collectible you are. We can't stop you from being sued. There's nothing you're going to do from preventing someone from suing you that wants to sue you, but you do have control over how collectible you are. And what my firm specifically does is work with higher net worth clients and high-risk professionals like entrepreneurs, business owners, doctors, real estate investors, someone who's turned that 1 million net worth mark. And it does come with a higher initial startup cost, generally, about $29,000. And within our network, we protected collectively over $4 billion worth of assets in the systems we create.
That's awesome, and I think that's a great. Transition to today's topic. So let's go a little bit further down the line of the benefits of asset protection trust. Maybe start off with defining what it is for the listeners that aren't familiar with them or haven't heard of them.
Yeah, so an asset protection trust is not a revocable living trust. Those are what you put down as to avoid probate, avoid the courts. When you die, have your medical directives, have your financial directives, name some beneficiaries. Those are not going to hold up in the court to offer you any protection from creditors or lawsuits. They're not designed to, so they can't. What asset protection trusts are specific trusts with specific, language that has some teeth if you're being sued or attacked. And they're all self-settled spendthrift trusts. And so the big thing that comes into using asset protection trusts really isn't first the trust, but it's the jurisdiction that you pick to put them in. What jurisdiction means is, laws and rules change from one state to another state, Nevada to California, and they even are different from one country to another, the U.S. versus another country. And so you have two options when you set up asset protection trusts. You can create them domestically in the U.S., like in Nevada, or you can set them up offshore in another country like the Cook Islands. I personally prefer, with our clientele, the power of going offshore if and when it's needed, because it's the best home court advantage. It forces other parties suing you to settle their claims for pennies on the dollar or to completely go away. And that's because of the power that these foreign offshore trusts have, like in the Cook Islands, called statutory non-recognition. They just don't recognize other countries' court orders or judgments or awards. What this means is that a U.S. judgment against you is completely worthless. They'd have to go and show it in the Cook Islands, and that trustee is just going to say, sorry, we don't care, we don't recognize them. That person suing you is going to have to sue you there in the Cook Islands. They're going to have to front all the court costs and fly in a judge from New Zealand. They can't take their U.S. attorneys with them. If they lose, they pay, and they have to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, the murder standard. And there's only a 1-year statute of limitations. So to be purely foreign, it's very effective. They're very strong, 5 out of 5 stars. But they're not for everybody. A lot of times a purely foreign asset protection trust is just overkill. And honestly, a purely foreign asset protection trust is just a hard pill to swallow for most because they're just so expensive. So what we see a lot of people doing is they don't want to deal with the cost and all the extra hurdles, so they simply create a purely domestic asset protection trust. It's going to be less expensive with cost and maintenance fees, but they're going to fail in effectiveness and control just because of the way the U.S. legal system's designed. Like, you can't escape the U.S. Constitution and the full faith and credit clause. And so I'm not a big fan of anything purely domestic. When it comes to asset protection trust, if it doesn't have at least an offshore component with it, just because of the way our legal system is set up. I prefer a bridge trust. It's a hybrid of a domestic and a foreign asset protection trust. And what we're doing is just combining the best of both. You know, these trusts have been around for over 30 years, so they're not new. They've been tested. They've gone through lots of court cases. And then you also have the 40-year power and strength of foreign asset protection trusts in your back pocket. And so these bridge trusts, they're fully registered foreign Cook Island trusts from day one. You know, they're already registered offshore from the get-go. But the win-win is that the IRS actually classifies the trust not foreign, but as domestic, because we draft them to be in compliance with USC Section 7701, which is the court test and the control test. And so when you don't need to be foreign, this trust is just classified domestically. But the benefit of it is that if the day ever comes that you're being sued or you have a big lawsuit and we have to pull the trigger and drop the domestic compliance and cross the bridge, you now have that statutory non-recognition in your back pocket and the power and strength of the Cook Islands sitting there if you ever need it.
So there's some people listening right now that that are right in your category that maybe haven't set something up like this. So business owners, entrepreneurs, executives, and they're thinking about, do they fit the bill, or are they the right type of candidate for one of these asset protection trusts? I mean, what do you typically find are the right fit for to create one of these trusts?
Anybody who has a target, and has visibility. And so if you own something, like let's say you're a real estate investor and you own something, you have a larger target, you're having a larger net worth. Real estate, especially as a real estate investor, you're in the biggest litigated area of law that there is. There's a lot that can go wrong. If you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, you're a startup, or even not, you're a successful business owner. Now you have a lot of equity also, plus a company, you have a lot of liability. So it just goes to anyone who has a high-risk profession, whether it be a business owner, or a startup, a real estate investor, doctors who also invest. If you have a net worth generally around $1 million, and this is net, right? We don't talk about protecting gross because we only protect what someone can get. So there's a big difference in confusion on, let's say you have $100 million net, gross, you gross $100 million a year, but let's say you only get 4% of that is net. So we're only talking about them protecting $4 million net because that's what somebody suing you is going to go after, your net value plus your cash flow. So there's a big distinction on that. So what we want to protect is your equity and your net value. And so we can protect, the corporate owner's shares. We can protect the real estate investor's equity. We can protect, the doctor from large malpractice judgments who also has outside investments in real estate and syndications.
That's awesome. So, Brian, that being said, if somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about Bradley Legal Corp, I mean, what's the best way for them to follow up and to connect with you and your team?
Yeah, so we have lots of information on my website, www.btblegal.com, lots of educational videos, lots of pamphlets to go through, a large frequently asked questions section that I think will answer almost everybody's questions. They can email me directly, Brian, BRIAN, @btblegal.com. And we do free consultations. It's just because I'd rather have people have information and we go over a full risk analysis and profile and see what they have, where they can get liability from, and then just tell them our recommendation and let them be educated and make educated decisions versus being afraid to call a professional, call a lawyer because they may want to talk to some more, but they don't want to pay consultation fees. So I'd rather just people be educated.
That's awesome. So, Brian, really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about all the great things that you're doing to protect individuals to protect their assets and giving us the distinction between domestic versus offshore asset protection trust and also bridge. So good stuff there. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review in the Apple iTunes Store. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, Mission Matters Money, definitely give us a subscribe there, but also leave us some comments in the video. Love to know what kind of projects and things that you're working on. And Brian, thanks again for coming on the show.